I thought our 10th anniversary marked a decade of perfect love, but my husband's surprise proposal was actually the first move in a calculated war. 10 years, a full decade. We were celebrating our 10th wedding anniversary, and I honestly thought my life was a movie. Not some high-octane thriller, but one of those cozy, feel-good romantic comedies where everything just works. Mark and I had built a beautiful life from scratch. We'd met in college, two broke kids with nothing but ramen noodles and big dreams. Now we had the house with the wraparound porch, the two goofy golden retrievers, the careers we'd both worked so hard for. He was a successful architect, and I ran my own graphic design business from home. It was perfect, or so I thought. The evening started like a scene from that very movie. We'd decided against a fancy, overpriced restaurant and chose to cook our anniversary dinner together at home. The scent of garlic and rosemary filled our kitchen, the one he'd designed with a massive island just for me because he knew how much I loved to bake. Frank Sinatra was crooning from the smart speaker. We were chopping vegetables, sipping a ridiculously expensive bottle of red wine we'd been saving, and laughing about the time we tried to assemble a piece of IKEA furniture and almost ended our relationship over a single, misplaced screw. He pulled me close, his chin resting on my shoulder as I stirred the risotto. "A decade, babe," he murmured into my hair. "Can you believe it? Feels like yesterday." I leaned back into him, my heart so full it felt like it might burst. "To many more," I'd whispered, clinking my wine glass against his. We sat down at the dining table, which I'd set with our best china and the candles he'd bought me. The meal was incredible. The conversation was easy, flowing from nostalgic memories to future plans. We talked about a trip to Italy we were planning for the next year, about finally landscaping the backyard. Everything felt normal. Everything felt right. Mark was being his usual charming, attentive self, telling me how beautiful I looked, how he couldn't imagine his life without me. He topped up my wine, his eyes sparkling in the candlelight, and then his expression shifted. It was subtle, just a slight tightening around his mouth, a flicker of something unreadable in his gaze. "Clara," he said, his voice a little too serious, a little too rehearsed. He put his fork down and folded his hands on the table. "There's something I want to talk to you about, something I've been thinking about for a while now." My stomach did a little flip. Was he sick? Was something wrong at work? My mind raced through a dozen terrible possibilities, but none of them came close to what he said next. "I've been doing a lot of reading," he began, "about relationships, about human nature, about how we evolve as people, and I think we've reached a new stage in our marriage, a stronger, more secure stage." He paused, taking a deep breath like he was about to give a presentation. "I think we're so strong, in fact, that we can handle something that most couples can't. I think we should consider an open marriage." The words hung in the air between us, thick and poisonous, instantly souring the taste of the wine in my mouth. I must have misheard him. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for him to burst out laughing and tell me he was joking. But he just sat there, watching me with this earnest, expectant look on his face, as if he'd just proposed the most romantic, enlightened idea in the world, an open marriage. The phrase itself felt alien, like a language I didn't speak. He wanted to sleep with other people, and he wanted my permission. On our 10th anniversary. My heart didn't just break, it atomized. In that single second, every laugh we'd shared, every promise we'd made, every future plan we'd just discussed, turned to dust. The movie in my head flickered and died, replaced by a cold, harsh reality. He wasn't joking. He continued talking, his voice a low, reasonable drone. He was using words like honesty, freedom, and strengthening our core bond. He said it wasn't about a lack of love for me, but an expansion of love. He said it would be a way to be completely transparent and avoid the ugliness of secrets or cheating. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. He was proposing cheating, but with a fancy progressive label slapped on it. I didn't say a word. I just stood up, my chair scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the sudden, deafening silence. His monologue faltered. He looked up at me, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He actually thought I'd consider this. He thought I'd sit there and have a rational discussion about the logistics of him sleeping with other women. I walked calmly to the small bowl by the front door where we kept our keys. I picked up his set, the key to the house we built together, the key to the car I'd helped him buy. I walked back to the table and placed them on the polished wood next to his plate of half-eaten anniversary risotto. His eyes followed the keys, his brow furrowed. And then I looked him dead in the eye, pointed to the front door, and said the only two words that made any sense. "Get out." He was stunned. He actually looked shocked, as if I was the one who had just shattered our entire world. He started to stammer, to argue, to tell me I was overreacting, that we just needed to talk it through. But I was done talking. He left, grabbing his keys and his jacket, still trying to reason with me from the doorway, until I finally slammed the door in his face and locked it. The silence that followed was absolute. It was just me, the cooling dinner, and the ghost of my 10-year marriage. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and for a moment, I just couldn't breathe. After what felt like an eternity, I dragged myself to the living room, collapsing onto the sofa. That's when I saw it. On the coffee table, right where he'd left it, was his iPad. And just as my eyes landed on it, the screen lit up with a new notification. It was a message from a name I didn't recognize, a woman's name, and the message preview was all I needed to see. It read, "Can't wait for our new chapter to officially begin. Did you tell her yet?" That winking emoji, the sheer audacity of it burned itself onto my retinas. The message wasn't just a confirmation of my worst fears. It was a celebration. They had a plan. This open marriage pitch wasn't some spontaneous, half-baked idea born from a midlife crisis. It was a calculated, strategic move, a premeditated attack on our life, and I was the last to know. The shock that had frozen me to the spot began to thaw, replaced by a glacial, creeping rage that started in my gut and spread through my veins like ice. My hands, which had been trembling, were suddenly steady. I reached out and picked up the iPad. My thumb hovered over the home button. A part of me screamed not to look, to hurl the device against the wall and shatter it into a million pieces, just like he had shattered my world. It felt like a violation, opening his private messages. But then I realized the truth. The violation had already happened. My home, my marriage, my trust, it had all been violated long before I picked up this cold piece of glass and metal. This wasn't about snooping anymore. This was about survival. I needed to know the full extent of the lie I'd been living. I pressed the button. A password screen appeared. For a moment, I thought I was stumped, but then a bitter laugh escaped my lips. I knew the password. Of course I did. I typed in the 4 digits. Our wedding anniversary, 1023, October 23rd. The sheer, sickening irony of it was a punch to the gut. The tablet unlocked. His iMessage app was right there on the home screen, a green icon with a red 1 hovering over it. I tapped it. The conversation with Amber was at the top. It wasn't just a few messages. It was a novel, months and months of them, stretching back further than I could bear to scroll. I started at the top, at the most recent ones. They were discussing his speech, the one he'd just given me. She'd helped him craft it. "Remember to use the word evolve," one of her messages read. "It makes it sound like a good thing, like you're doing it for her." Another said, "Don't let her get emotional. Stick to the logic. You're so good at that." They'd workshopped his betrayal like a business proposal. I kept scrolling down, my heart turning to a small, hard stone in my chest. There were photos, not just of her, though there were plenty of those, selfies with pouty lips and suggestive captions, but of them, together. At a bar I didn't recognize. On a weekend trip to a little coastal town, he'd told me he was visiting for an architectural conference. In one picture, she was wearing his college sweatshirt, the one I'd bought him for his birthday 5 years ago, the one he kept on the back of his office chair. They had inside jokes, pet names. They dissected my personality, my habits, my insecurities. Clara would never wear something that bold, he'd written under a photo of a dress she'd sent him. She's so predictable. Does she still fall asleep at 10 p.m. on the dot? Amber had asked. Like clockwork, he'd replied with a laughing emoji. Every word was a tiny, sharp blade twisting into me. The sound of a key fumbling in the front door lock made me jump. My blood ran cold. He was trying to get back in. Clara, honey, come on, open the door. His voice was muffled, laced with a frustration that was quickly turning to anger. You're not being reasonable. We need to talk about this like adults. I scrambled off the sofa, clutching the iPad to my chest, and backed away into the kitchen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The rattling stopped. Then came the banging, a hard, insistent fist against the solid oak door. Clara! His shouting spurred me into action. He thought I wasn't being reasonable. He thought we could talk about this. There was nothing left to talk about, but I wasn't going to let him back in. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of a screaming match. My mind was suddenly crystal clear. I needed a plan. I needed evidence. While he continued to pound on the door, I worked frantically. I took screenshots of everything, the messages, the photos, the dates. I airdropped them all to my phone and my laptop, a sick feeling of dread and determination churning inside me. I had to get out of here. I couldn't be in this house when he eventually found a way in or gave up and left. This space, our home, was contaminated. I needed to see if there was more. I went from his messages to his email, my fingers flying across the screen. I searched her name, Amber Dubois. Dozens of emails popped up, restaurant reservations, hotel confirmations. And then I saw it, a flight confirmation for 2 people, to Rome, leaving in 3 months. It was for the trip to Italy. Our trip. The one we had just been happily planning over dinner. They weren't just sleeping together. They were planning to take over my entire life, my dreams included. The pounding on the door finally stopped. I held my breath, listening. I heard his car start, the engine roaring to life before peeling out of the driveway. He was gone, for now. The silence was a relief, but I knew I didn't have much time. I had to finish. I kept digging through his emails, a frantic archaeologist excavating the ruins of my marriage. I found what I was looking for, the official booking confirmation for the Italian villa. But attached to that same email chain, just below the confirmation, was something else. It was a PDF, a bank statement. I opened it, my eyes scanning the document. It wasn't our joint savings account. It was an account I'd never seen before, with a bank we didn't use. The account name at the top of the page made the air leave my lungs in a single, silent scream. It was a joint account, under the names Mark Peterson and Amber Dubois. And I recognized the transactions, large 5-figure withdrawals from our shared savings, one made as recently as last week, with the memo line simply reading, investment transfer, investment transfer. The words were so sterile, so corporate, so completely devoid of the monumental betrayal they represented. He hadn't just been cheating on me emotionally and physically, he had been systematically robbing me. This wasn't a midlife crisis or a fleeting affair. This was grand larceny disguised as a marriage. The money I'd worked my fingers to the bone for, the profits from my business that I'd poured into our joint savings, with dreams of Italian villas and a comfortable future, he'd been siphoning it away to fund a life with her. The rage that had been a slow, creeping ice now erupted into a volcano of pure, white-hot fury. The grief, the shock, the heartbreak, it was all still there, but it was now fuel. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a woman with a mission. I didn't cry. There was no time for tears. My movements became sharp, efficient. I continued the digital excavation with a vengeance, screenshotting the bank statements, the transfer records, every damning piece of financial evidence I could find, and sending it all to a new, secure cloud account he couldn't possibly access. He'd called me predictable. Fine. Let him predict this. I grabbed an overnight bag from the closet, the one we used for spontaneous weekend trips. The irony tasted like acid. I threw in essentials: a change of clothes, my laptop, my chargers, my toothbrush. As I zipped it up, my eyes landed on my jewelry box. Inside was the diamond necklace he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. I picked it up, the diamonds cold and heavy in my palm. For a moment, I wanted to smash it. Instead, I carefully put it in my bag, along with every other piece of valuable jewelry I owned. He wasn't getting another damn thing. My mind was working faster than it ever had before. I needed a lawyer, a good one, a shark. I also needed somewhere to go. Not my parents' house, they'd just worry, and I couldn't handle their questions yet. Not my best friend Sarah's place. Mark knew her address, and I couldn't risk him showing up there, trying to talk reasonably. I needed somewhere anonymous, somewhere I could think. A hotel. I booked a room on my phone for 2 nights in a city an hour away, using my personal credit card, the one he wasn't on. As the confirmation email popped up, a thought struck me. Predictable Clara who falls asleep at 10 p.m. The insult echoed in my head, but now it sparked an idea. He thought he knew me. He thought he could anticipate my every move. He was about to find out how wrong he was. I walked back into the living room, the scene of the crime. The 2 wine glasses were still on the table, my risotto congealed and cold. I looked around the house he designed, filled with the furniture we chose together, adorned with photos of our smiling faces from a life that was now a complete fabrication. It wasn't my home anymore. It was a set, and I was done playing my part. I went to my office, powered up my computer, and opened the client files for the projects I was currently working on. With a heavy heart, I drafted a professional, apologetic email to each of them, explaining that due to a sudden family emergency, I would be unable to complete their projects and was refunding their deposits in full. I attached the contact information for another designer I trusted. It was a huge financial hit, and it felt like another piece of my identity was being stripped away. But I knew I couldn't focus on work. My only job now was dismantling Mark Peterson. I initiated the refunds, watching my business account drain. It was terrifying, but it was also liberating. I was cutting ties. Then I did something else. I logged into our joint bank accounts, our main checking, our savings, the one he'd been stealing from. He'd taken tens of thousands, but there was still a significant amount left. My half, and then some, for damages. With trembling fingers, I transferred 50% of the total remaining balance into my own personal account. Then I paused. Was 50% fair? He'd bankrolled his affair with our shared money. He'd planned a trip for his mistress using funds I had earned. No, 50% wasn't fair at all. I calculated the amount he'd transferred to his secret account with Amber. It was just over $80,000. I went back into the transfer screen. I typed in a new number, transferring an additional $80,000 to my account. An eye for an eye, a dollar for a dollar. I clicked Confirm. The screen read, Transfer successful. With the money secured, my digital trail erased, and my bag packed, I was ready to leave. I took one last look around. On the kitchen island was a notepad where we left messages for each other. I picked up a pen. I thought about all the things I could write. I could fill pages with rage, with questions, with pain. But he wasn't worth the ink. I simply wrote 3 words. I know everything. I left the note on his pillow, right where his head was supposed to be. I walked out the front door, the same one I'd pointed him to just a couple of hours ago. I didn't lock it. There was nothing left inside for me to protect. As I drove away, I didn't look back. I drove straight to the hotel, checked in, and locked the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed in the sterile, anonymous room, the full weight of the night finally crashing down on me. I had the evidence. I had the money, I had a plan. But as I pulled out my phone to start researching divorce lawyers, a new email notification popped up. It wasn't from Mark. The sender was Amber Dubois. My blood froze. I opened it. There was no subject line, just a single terrifying attachment, a video file. The video file. It sat there in the email, a small, innocuous icon holding untold horrors. My thumb hovered over it, paralyzed by a potent cocktail of dread and morbid curiosity. What could she possibly send me? A confession, a taunt, a sex tape? Every possibility was worse than the last. Mark must have called her, told her I'd kicked him out, and this was her response. A power play. A way to rub my nose in their victory. The rage that had propelled me out of my house surged back, hot and fierce. She wanted to play games? Fine. I was done being the unsuspecting wife. I pressed play. The video loaded. It wasn't what I expected. The camera was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone. The first thing I saw was the interior of a car, specifically the passenger seat and dashboard of Mark's car. I recognized the scuff on the glove compartment, the stupid air freshener, shaped like a pine tree that I always complained about. Then the camera panned over to the driver's seat. It was Amber. She was looking into the camera, a smug, self-satisfied smile playing on her lips. She looked younger than I'd pictured, sharper, harder. "Hi, Clara," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Mark just called me. Sounds like things didn't go quite as planned tonight. He said you were overreacting." She let out a small, condescending laugh. "Listen, I know this is a lot to take in, but you need to understand what Mark and I have is real. It's not just some fling. We're in love. And honestly, this is the best thing for all of us. You just can't see it yet." I wanted to throw my phone across the room. The sheer nerve of this woman, lecturing me on what was best for me, as if she were some kind of enlightened relationship guru and not a home-wrecking parasite. I forced myself to keep watching, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. "Mark is a wonderful man," she continued, her eyes gleaming, "but he needs more than you can give him. He needs passion, adventure. He feels stifled, stuck. He told me all about it." She paused for effect, letting the words sink in. "And I know you think this is about the money, too. He told me you'd probably go there. But you have to understand, he sees that money as his. He's the one who made the smart investments, who grew that portfolio. He thinks of you as, well, more of a comfortable roommate than an equal partner. His words, not mine." Every sentence was a carefully crafted dagger, designed to inflict maximum pain. She was systematically dismantling my worth, my contribution, my entire identity within my own marriage, using my husband's own words as the weapon. I felt sick, but I couldn't look away. I had to see this through. I had to know just how deep the rot went. "So, here's the deal," she said, her tone shifting from faux empathy to cold, hard business. "You can fight this. You can drag this through the courts, hire some pit bull lawyer, and make a big, ugly mess. You'll lose. We have a plan, Clara, a solid one. Mark's already moved most of the liquid assets into accounts you can't touch. That little bit you probably transferred tonight? Consider it a parting gift. If you try to fight for the house, for alimony, for anything else, we will ruin you. We'll paint you as an unstable, jealous shrew. And we have proof." Proof? What proof could they possibly have? I had been a perfect wife, a supportive partner. My life was an open book, a boring one by her standards, apparently. Amber's smile widened, turning cruel. "Mark's a smart man, an architect. He's all about structure, planning, and surveillance." She reached over and tapped something on the car's center console. The screen in the video then switched to a different view. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. It was a live feed from inside my house, my living room. My blood turned to ice. There were cameras, tiny hidden cameras in my home. The feed showed the abandoned dinner on the table, the overturned chair. My home, my sanctuary, had been bugged. "He's been documenting your erratic behavior for months," Amber purred, her voiceover returning as the video feed continued to play. "Every time you got a little too emotional, a little too loud, every argument, every tearful outburst, it's all recorded, all neatly filed away. A judge will see a calm, rational man trying to deal with a hysterical wife who is clearly unwell. Who do you think they'll believe?" I couldn't breathe. The violation was absolute, a total invasion of my privacy that went far beyond infidelity and theft. He had been building a case against me in my own home while I was blissfully unaware, cooking his favorite meals and planning our future. He hadn't just been planning to leave me. He had been planning to utterly destroy me, to strip me of my assets, my home, and my sanity. "So, think carefully, Clara," Amber's voice concluded as the video switched back to her face. "Take the little bit of money you have left and walk away quietly. Start over. It's the smart play. If you don't, I promise you, we will burn your entire world to the ground. You have 24 hours to agree. Mark will be in touch with the terms." The video ended. The screen went black. I sat in the silence of the hotel room, the phone feeling like a block of ice in my hand. They had me. They had thought of everything. Any lawyer I hired would see their evidence and tell me I had no case. I was trapped, defeated before I'd even begun to fight. I dropped the phone on the bed and buried my face in my hands, a wave of complete and utter despair washing over me. It was hopeless. And then a thought pierced through the fog, a tiny insignificant detail from the video, the air freshener, the stupid pine tree air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. I always complained about it. I complained about it just last week, in fact. I told him it was tacky and that I was going to throw it out. His response replayed in my head, word for word. "Don't you dare," he'd said, laughing. "That's my good luck charm, a gift from my first ever client. It's got a GPS tracker in it just in case the car ever gets stolen." At the time, I'd rolled my eyes. Now, my heart started to beat again, a slow, steady drum of an idea. A wild, desperate, and possibly brilliant idea. He'd bugged the house to watch me, but he'd also bugged his own car, and he'd told me exactly how. The GPS tracker. That stupid tacky pine tree held the key. It was a single loose thread in the otherwise perfectly woven net he and Amber had cast around me. He'd planned for my every predictable move, but he'd made one arrogant, critical mistake. He'd underestimated my memory and overestimated his own cleverness. The despair that had crushed me just moments before evaporated, replaced by a surge of adrenaline so potent it made my hands shake. This wasn't just a fight for money or a house anymore. This was a fight for my name, my sanity, and my future. And I was going to use his own weapon against him. I didn't have 24 hours. I had to act now. While they were basking in their supposed victory, thinking I was curled up in a ball somewhere, defeated. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The name of the client he'd mentioned, the one who supposedly gave him the good luck charm, was a prominent local developer. A quick search of Mark's old emails brought up their correspondence from years ago. Buried in the chain was an invoice for a high-end security system Mark had designed for the developer's estate. And right there in the itemized list was the name of the security company he'd used. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. I found the security company's website. They specialized in corporate and private surveillance, offering a range of products, including the exact type of GPS tracker disguised as an air freshener. They had a customer login portal. I didn't have the login details, of course, but I had something better. I had years of knowledge about Mark. I clicked the forgot password link and entered his primary email address. The prompt asked for his mother's maiden name. I typed it in. The next question asked for his first pet's name. I typed that in too. The final question was the make of his first car. A rusty old Ford Escort he'd been so proud of. Access granted. I was in. A map immediately populated the screen, a blinking red dot pulsing over a location just a few miles from the hotel. That was his car. My heart hammered in my chest. The system was sophisticated. It didn't just show the current location. It had a history log. Routes, speeds, stop times, everything. But that wasn't the feature that made my breath catch in my throat. This particular model, the premium one Mark had apparently splurged on, didn't just have GPS. It had an audio recording feature, a tiny microphone embedded in the plastic pine tree designed to capture audio from inside the vehicle. It could be activated remotely, and it saved the recordings to the cloud. With a trembling hand, I clicked on the Audio Archives tab. There it was, a list of audio files time-stamped, stretching back for months. My eyes scanned the list, stopping on the files from tonight. I clicked on the most recent one, recorded just over an hour ago. I put my laptop's volume on low and pressed play. Amber's voice filled the quiet hotel room, the same smug, condescending words from the video she had sent me. And then, after she finished her monologue, I heard Mark's voice. "Perfect," he said. "God, you're brilliant. Did you send it?" "Just did," she replied. "She'll be broken by morning. She'll sign anything you put in front of her." I kept listening, my stomach churning. They laughed. They celebrated. They mocked me. And then they started talking business. He bragged about the hidden cameras, how he'd set them up himself while I was visiting my parents. He detailed, with chilling precision, which assets he'd hidden and how. He named the offshore account, the fake shell corporation he'd created. He even admitted to falsifying documents to make it look like I was an unstable spender. He laid out their entire criminal conspiracy, right there in the supposed privacy of his own car. He had handed me his confession on a silver platter, recorded in crystal-clear, high-definition audio. I spent the next 3 hours in a fugue state of methodical fury. I downloaded every single audio file. I downloaded the GPS logs that showed him not at architectural conferences, but at Amber's apartment complex. I cross-referenced the dates with the illegal money transfers. I compiled it all into a single, meticulously organized folder. The sun was just beginning to rise when I made my first call. Not to a divorce lawyer, to a criminal attorney, the best, most ruthless one I could find. When I met with Elena Vance that morning, I didn't cry or rage. I calmly laid out the entire story, playing snippets of the audio recordings and showing her the financial documents. Her expression went from professional sympathy to the focused, predatory grin of a shark that smells blood in the water. She told me to sit tight and not, under any circumstances, contact Mark or Amber. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. Mark's terms arrived via email, a document of such breathtaking arrogance it was almost comical. He was offering me $5,000 and a gag order in exchange for me walking away from our home, our assets, and our marriage without a fight. He thought he had won. He was wrong. The first blow landed at precisely 9 a.m. the following day. It wasn't a call from my lawyer to his. It was a team of forensic accountants from the State Banking Commission armed with a warrant, freezing the Shell Corporation and every associated account based on evidence of fraud and embezzlement. The second blow landed an hour later when 2 uniformed police officers showed up at Mark's office and arrested him in the middle of his morning meeting for illegal wiretapping and conspiracy. The fallout was spectacular. The hidden camera footage he was so proud of became inadmissible the moment his own illegal surveillance was revealed. His confession, captured by his own security device, was the nail in his coffin. Amber, faced with her own conspiracy charges, turned on him immediately, trying to paint herself as another one of his victims. It didn't work. The video she sent me proved her willing participation. In the end, I didn't just get divorced. I presided over the complete and total implosion of their lives. Mark lost his job, his architectural license, and his freedom. He's currently serving a sentence for multiple felonies. Amber is buried under a mountain of legal fees and a civil suit I filed that will ensure she never profits from her actions. I got the house. I got every single penny he stole, plus damages. I sold the house, the one filled with tainted memories, and used the money to start over, somewhere new. It wasn't the cozy rom-com ending I had envisioned for my life 10 years ago. It was something better. It was the story of a woman who was underestimated, pushed to the brink, and discovered a strength she never knew she had. He suggested an open marriage, and I handed him the key. But in the end, it wasn't the key to the door he was expecting. It was the key to his own prison cell, and I was the one who turned the lock.